Okay. Good evening, everyone. I will call the meeting of the Parks and Rec Board to order. And I would like to take a moment to mention a loss to one of our employees at the in the Parks Department. Laura, and many of you who visit Easeling Pool on a regular basis, you're greeted by Laura. She's the receptionist at the window. She recently lost her 25-year-old fiance due to illness. And we as a board would like to extend our sincere sympathy to her for the loss of Brian Cooper, Brian's family, his many friends, and our hearts go out to Laura. At this point, on the agenda, we have presentations. Mr. Bott, oh, I'm sorry. I probably should, why are presentations? Hang on a second here, as I get my stuff together. Presentations are before changes to the agenda, so I guess we're just going to go ahead. Presentations, Mr. Bott.
Good evening. My name is Dean Bott. I'm the County Finance Director, and I believe the main reason that I am here, both Jason Jones and Commissioner Max Bauer asked me to come and talk a little bit about financial reporting. And I think what we want to try to do is come up with some meaningful financial information that we could present on a regular basis to the Parks and Rec Commission. And what I would like to do to start this, I guess, discussion, I provided a copy of a report, and just in case anyone else would like a copy, there's plenty here. But before we get into the numbers here, just briefly, we follow fund accounting principles. The entire county accounting system is set up based on fund accounting, which is a unique type of accounting. It's specialized and used primarily by governmental units, so it's not the same accounting that you would see in the profit world or corporate, or even in a small business. It's a type of accounting that's designed solely for governmental type entities. We follow the standards of the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, which is a national standard setting body. And then with that, we also comply with the state of Michigan's Uniform Chart of Accounts. So when you see information regarding various funds, it's done in accordance with some guidelines that are established by the state of Michigan. If you mix into that those standard setting bodies and those requirements, the fact that we also have state statutes that we have to follow in terms of budgeting, because we are spending public money, there's a state legal requirement that we also comply with. So when I think Jason has provided various reports in the past to the Parks and Rec Commission, and yes, they're very cumbersome. They're hard to probably get your arms around and actually make sense of them. So what we want to try to do is come up with more meaningful financial information, and that is the main reason that I am here, to answer questions or to get feedback so we can provide you with some information on a regular basis. But if I could jump into this summary, what I did here, Fund 208 is the fund that we use in the county's chart of accounts for the Parks and Rec Commission. This fund stands by itself. It has a balance sheet component, cash, receivables, payables, revenues, expenditures. What I've done here is provided just the revenue summary, and these are the revenue transactions for 2009. There are a very small number of revenue line items in the fund, and then down below I've summarized the departments that are in the Parks and Recreation Fund, starting with 751, which is the Parks and Rec Commission, all the way down through 761, the Howe arena or the multipurpose facility. I've indicated the revenues in total, and you can see that the revenue total agrees with the revenue detail, which is at the top half of the document. And then I've also listed the expenditures based on the same department that's listed to show then a net revenue expenditure difference and then the totals for the year. And what the net number shows at the bottom, the fourth column, is the actual use of fund balance, the $54,096.38. That was actually a budgeted use of fund balance. The fund does have its own fund balance that's accumulated over time. For 2009, we budgeted to use $77,318 in fund balance. So we came in a little bit better than what we planned on doing for a lot of reasons, and I really don't want to get into that tonight unless there are specific questions. But this is just to give you an idea of what the fund, the accounting, and the budget structure has in place. I don't know if this is what you would be looking for, or if you would want more detail. For example, if you look at the revenue detail, pool fees, we have one revenue line item, 65100, for all of the fees that are collected for the pool. I've heard some discussion that you may want more detail on that. And I know you have more pressing business to take care of tonight than to listen to me talk, so I'm going to be quiet now and entertain questions.
Okay.
Where is the transfer from the fund balance, Dean? What line item is that?
The last revenue line item that's listed on the top half, 69900, transfer in, is the amount that the county general fund appropriates to the Parks and Rec Department. It comes in as one revenue. It's an appropriation or an expenditure in the general fund. We do that on a quarterly basis, and that is based on the budget that the county board establishes.
And I think it's important for the commission to understand that $333,901 that was transferred in last year is going down. The appropriated amount for 2010 is $271,000.
That's correct.
How do you make that appropriation? The Parks and Recreation Department doesn't have its own fund balance, does it? Is it allocated every year by the County Board of Commissioners?
This fund, Fund 208, because it's a separate fund within our accounting system, actually can accumulate a fund balance. At the end of 2009, the fund balance, and Commissioner Maxbauer can correct me, I think it's $171,000 approximately.
Yes.
At the end of 2008, we had a $225,000 fund balance, but with the use of fund balance in 2009, I believe the number is 171.
It was $225,454, and now it's down to $171,000.
So do I understand that the fund balance from 208 is transferred in together with additional monies from a general countywide fund balance?
No, the fund balance stays in the fund unless the county board, and they wouldn't do that without discussing that with the Parks and Rec Commission, they could request to pull that money back. That has never been done. They could simply look at that and say, well, you have a fund balance here. Usually what's done, that's looked at to determine what the appropriation would be on an annual basis. There is some discretion as to how that might be used. If you're accumulating a fund balance and you don't have a...
So 208's fund balance just keeps accumulating? Our account fund balance keeps accumulating?
It would, but in 2009, the revenues were less than the expenditure, so it was reduced accordingly. It was reduced by a little over $54,000.
And we
And
anticipate...
where is that $54,000 shown on this? Where does that come into the budget? In 699?
No, it's actually, if you look at the revenue and expenditure columns, the totals down at the bottom are the actual transactions, and the budget is one thing, that's your financial plan.
Okay.
But then when your actual revenues, and the actual revenue was $643,000, compared to the actual expenditures were $697, you use some of the fund balance to support that difference. If the revenues would have been equal to the expenditures, there would have been no use of fund balance.
Okay, I think I get it. So if we'll get a fund balance transfer allocated by the county for 2010, and if we run at a deficit, even with that fund balance transfer, our fund balance will reduce in account 208.
That is correct. If we use the budgeted fund balance that's built into the budget for 2010, there would be a further reduction of the fund balance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Are there any other questions for Dean Bott? Any suggestions on how you would like to see the numbers presented? And as I told Dean, go ahead, Mr. Doran.
Dean, why are the line item 751 for the commission itself has got a $330,000 revenue budgeted, I guess, or $330,000 revenue? Well, where does that, and only 27,000 expenditures, what's the revenue?
That's a good question. The revenue there is actually the transfer in from the general fund. When that transfer in or appropriation is made, it goes only to Department 751.
I see.
It's not allocated back to the other departments. We generally tend to do that in all of our funds, rather than allocate that back to the 7 or 8 departments. It comes into one, the main department.
I got it.
And that is the only revenue source under Department 751.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dean Bott? Thank you, Dean.
I guess what we'll do then is I'll work with you and Jason to put something together that...
Yes,
we can-
and I would like to reiterate, and I'm told this to Dean, one of the reasons I asked him for this information is, of course, this commission is a recommending body. And I think it's extremely important that we know what our budgeted numbers are and that we look at them every month. And I've asked Dean also just to give us these line items, nothing in detail other than what's under this Fund 208 Departments list for 2007 and 2008, so we can take a look at trends. And if there's anything anyone else would like to see, by all means.
I have a clarification question, Commissioner Max Bauer.
Mr. Byrne.
Under 699, transfer in, the $333,901 for 2010 is down to 271, correct?
Correct.
And is this in reference to the county commission's recommendation that the pool budget be
Yes.
cut by 50,000, and that's where that...
That's correct.
That's where, okay,
That is correct.
okay.
Commissioner Larson.
I suspect that many of the expenditures in the department will be seasonal, and so like we had last month, we had, here's the total budgeted, here's what we spent so far, and then I think it was Commissioner McKellier indicated, let's compare it to where we were same date last year, so that we can sort of see whether expenses seem to be going up or holding steady or going down.
I think that's one of the things that we want to try to address or identify in the monthly report. We're not sure what that's going to look like, but we'll come up with
But we
something.
are working on it. But thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, Dean. I appreciate your work
Thank you.
so much and the time. Jason spoke to me briefly before the meeting, and he has a presentation that he would like to make at this time, and I understand, we're going to change this order of business next month, but at the moment, presentations is next on our list. So, Jason, would you like to please proceed?
Absolutely. I'd like to make a presentation of a gift to Marilyn Zielinski, our departmental secretary, for her 25 years of service to the county. So, Marilyn.
Wow. Marilyn, would you like to say a few words?
I was just
Speech,
totally
speech.
surprised. No, I can't think of anything. It's been interesting. The first 15 were in the county clerk's office. The last 10 have been in Parks and Recreation. I think I've learned more in the last 10. It's been a good experience to work for the county. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Open this later.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Moving on to the consent agenda. Number 1 on the list is approval of January 21st, 2010 minutes. So I would entertain a motion.
I
Commissioner
move they
Doran?
be approved.
Is there support?
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Taylor. He beat you by just a hair. Discussion. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Next on our agenda is additions, deletions, and approval of the agenda. Do we have any additions to the agenda, Commissioner Byrne?
We had a special meeting last Thursday in regards to baseball, and I know that a majority of this agenda was, I think, set before that meeting, so I would like to add baseball somewhere on here where it would be appropriate.
Okay. And noticing that we have a large number of people in the audience that probably would like to speak on baseball, with the Commission's permission, I would like to move that to number 1 under old business, and then move everything else down. Is that acceptable?
It's good.
All righty. So baseball will be number 1 under old business. Also, I would like to add under the consent agenda, item D, approval of the February 11th special meeting minutes. So,
I have a correction to the motion that I made. I think the motion should read, motion by Doran, seconded by Byrne, that we extend our sincere gratitude to the American Legion for their many years of dedication by starting and managing the youth baseball program, but recommend to the County Board of Commissioners that the youth baseball program be operated by Grand Traverse County through the Parks and Recreation. I think that should be department, beginning in 2010.
So your correction is from commission to department?
Yes, and also, instead of where it says, Maryland says dedication that they have, strike that and put by, B-Y,
Okay.
and then change started to starting and managed to managing.
Okay.
okay. Also, I would like to add, any other additions? I have one more. I would like to add under old business as number, it would probably be number 9, Rotary membership. This was an item that was tabled in December and was not brought back for conclusion, so I would like that to be number 9. So, at this particular point in time, seeing no additional additions, deletions, or changes, I would entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved, as amended?
Second.
It has been moved and supported to, for approval of the agenda as amended. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Next on the agenda, conflicts of interest. Hearing none, we will move on to item D, approval of February 11th special meeting minutes. I would entertain a motion to the meeting minutes as amended by Commissioner Doran.
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
Is there discussion? All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Next item on our agenda is public comment. Jason?
I'm just going to ask for a clarification. If folks are here to talk about baseball, would you prefer them talking at public comment or during the baseball item?
I think we should entertain them speaking during the baseball item. Next item on our agenda, and thank you for mentioning that, our board rules. If we proceed with the changes, we'll address that at our next meeting, thanks to Mr. Doran, but we'll get to that later. The next item on our agenda is general public comment. And at this time, I would like to turn over the meeting to Vice Chairman Ruskowski, because I, as a member of the public, have public comment.
All right. At this time, we are moving that baseball comment be moved towards discussion of baseball. If anyone else has Any comments for the board? Please come forward. State your name, please.
Christine Max Bauer, 503 West State Street. In 2006, and I have to say, I really am so passionate about this, and I'm here under public comment as a citizen in Grand Traverse County and a taxpayer in Grand Traverse County. In 2006, Easling Pool required a taxpayer subsidy of $127,054. In 2008, and I'm quoting Lutra, Easling Pool required a taxpayer subsidy of more than $250,000 to fund operations. I don't know any individual, any business, or any governing body that would ignore that kind of performance, and certainly the Board of Commissioners did not ignore it. The rate of increase was not only alarming, it was unsustainable. So in 2009, Easling Pool was studied, and the result was the Lutra report. Lutra found that, and I'm quoting, "The magnitude of taxpayer subsidy required is both extreme and unnecessary," end quote. Lutra gave specific recommendations that would not only improve the bottom line, but improve operations. The overall and constantly recurring theme of the report is clear. Your three most important groups are members, members, and members. Members are your best customers. Members are to receive priority. Memberships is how you are going to be able to sustain Easling Pool, and you must sustain Easling Pool if you are going to provide this community with a swimming pool. Presently, you adapt members' swimming to lessons. That's a 180 from Lutra's recommendation. Lutra states, you adapt your lessons to members' swimming. In the past week, I have seen so many examples of management putting members swimming last, I felt compelled to say something. Lutra states you need to minimize full pool rentals. There have been 3 new ones within the last week. Members were tossed aside as if they do not matter. The Maritime Academy came in and members were turned away. Could they have rented 2/3 of the pool? There were only 14 of them, and the answer is certainly. Yesterday, I watched as 2 lanes and the puddle were used to teach 2 children. They were polywogs and they never left the puddle. A swimmer asked if she could use one of the lanes and was told no. So I got out of the water and asked to speak with management. I voiced my objection and returned to swimming. I am now voicing my objection here. I watched an empty lane, lane 5, for 60 minutes. I watched an empty lane, lane 6, for 55 minutes. I'm a member who feels very much like Rodney Dangerfield. I can't get no respect. We can't even get the simplest of the recommendations, lane lines, and fast swimmers in the middle. After 10 months, the Lutra was done 10 months ago and presented 10 months ago. The tail is still wagging the dog. Members are repeatedly having their schedule interrupted, changed at the last minute, or are being ignored, and you can't do that. People are creatures of habit. You cannot repeatedly take away members' opportunity to swim, and that is what Lutra says. If you can accommodate members by giving them more room, why don't you? 3 lanes in a puddle for 2 students, and when I complained, I was told by the lifeguard, that's the way we do it. Members are your prime customer. Members get the best treatment. Everyone else gets good treatment, but members are number 1. That is where your revenue comes from. There is no focus on developing membership, and that doesn't mean counting employees and punch cards as memberships. Commissioner Hooper in September asked for a compilation of memberships, and here it is. And if you read it, it counts 32 Civic Center staff as members, a volunteer as a member, punch cards as members, senior punch cards as members, single punch cards, 118 of them as memberships. Those are not memberships. And if you read Lutra, those are not memberships. The change in philosophy was supposed to occur not only because a focus of memberships reduces costs from staff, scheduling is easier, revenues will increase, and if revenue increases, this community will continue to have a pool. This community will continue to be able to have a place for children to learn to swim, and there needs to be a change in attitude. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, seeing none. Communications?
We have no communications for this agenda.
I now move over to Chris again.
Thank you. Next on under administration, old business, number 1 is baseball. Commissioners? Mr. Dorn.
I think that we have a motion in front of this commission. I would encourage additional public comment on it, but the motion, which I will read if it's okay for everybody.
Absolutely.
That was tabled at the last meeting, is motion by Doran, seconded by Byrne, that we extend our sincere gratitude to the American Legion for their many years of dedication by starting and managing the youth baseball program, but recommend to the County Board of Commissioners that the youth baseball program be operated by Grand Traverse County through the Parks and Recreation Department beginning in 2010.
All right. We have a motion on the floor.
Do we want to have discussion, or?
I was going to entertain
Public comment?
comments from the public so that we could hear what they have to say, and then we can discuss and make our decision. So at this time, I will open the public comment floor to the members of the public who wish to talk about baseball. Please step forward, state your name and address.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm Mark Greiner. I'm the Senior Vice Commander of American Legion Post 35. We have managed the baseball program since long before I was in existence. Thank you all first for your time you all put out of your schedules last week to have the meeting to isolate the problems that we know are in hand. We had lots of discussion about what happened last year. Myself, I'm not focusing on last year, I'm focusing on this year. We as the American Legion would like to continue a baseball program. After our meeting with you folks last week, we did some serious looking in the American Legion and how things work out. And what I can tell you is, we as the American Legion face challenges like everybody else does in the world today. The biggest challenge is the ability of the extra time we have in our lives, how we use that time and what we can do with it. Anybody that's in here today that has a job probably feels very fortunate. Some people may not have steady employment and feel that things could be better, and I agree with them. I have a full-time job. I'm very fortunate. My full-time job requires a significant commitment of my time. We discussed it with many of the Legion members, and we have determined that the biggest challenge that will face us from this point forward is the ability to have the time to commit to sustain the program to the level of which it needs to be done. So, with that said, we have determined that if we were to continue the program, we would have to commit to hiring a full-time seasonal employee to manage and run the program. If Grand Traverse County was to take the program over, I believe it would be similar that would have to be done. We talked heavily about using volunteers. The biggest thing you see right now is people's time does not seem to be enough to handle the volunteer parts of the volunteer parts of the project that are needed. In the past, we had a lot of volunteers that were willing to help. The volunteer stream is just getting to be less and less. It's getting to be smaller and smaller. It's drying up because if it comes down to, I can drop my child off, they can play baseball, and I can go work at my second job so I can keep my house, or I can assist in baseball, and I have to give up something that I don't want to give up. That's not a hard decision for people to make in this current economic times. So, with that in mind, we've discussed several more things that the American Legion would like to do. We would like to partner with an organization and possibly work with them to take overall operations of the program under their wings. There's been several community organizations have been mentioned. Obviously, in the time frame from last Thursday's meeting until tonight, we haven't been able to put all those things in place. The other thing is, as it stands right now, we don't have an agreement in place saying that we would be able to use the facilities and continue the program this year. So we are not really able to make 100% commitment to anything until we get some direction how that goes. Obviously, what this commission determines this evening will be, I'm sure, considered strongly by the Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners. They obviously will determine the final result of that, and I believe they have a meeting scheduled in about a week from now, sometime in the next 7 to 10 days. So with that in mind, I'm not going to worry if other people want to speak about what's happened in the past. By all means, please do that. That's why, unfortunately, there's a young man, excuse me, was brought back today that is out there supporting your ability to do that. So, if anyone has any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Greiner? Thank you, Mr. Greiner.
Thank you all for your time.
Would anyone else like to make public comment on baseball at this time? Please come forward, state your name, and give your address, please.
I can hobble up, sorry. My name is Nicole Whitcup, and my address is 7007 Secor Road. And I was here at the last meeting. I agree with Mr. Greiner. We don't need to go over all of the past issues. But there is one thing I want to address first, that I appreciate the fact that they have gone back and spoken about how they could partner with another organization to help run the American Legion program this summer. However, it's February. They don't even have an agreement to run the program yet. They still have to find someone that can help them. And I strongly feel that the county or the Parks and Rec board here is ready to put this into place. And I disagree with the volunteer status he spoke of also, because I know myself and many, many other people have volunteered, will continue to volunteer. It's our children that are playing these sports, and those are our priorities. A few things I wanted to mention was that I do feel that the American Legion has run a successful program in the past, and that the veterans are to be commended for their service. I don't want to take away from that. But right now I feel like there needs to be a new direction. I'm not satisfied that they still have not said that there would be a change in leadership from last year, and that is huge to me, because I'm just waiting for someone to come out and say, yeah, we do recognize these problems and we are going to change the leadership. No one has come forward and said that. I also don't understand why, if they are so strongly committed to running the program, why did they not have a greater showing last week? There was one person here, and to quote him, and I don't know if it's exactly, when Mr. Greiner asked about the possibility of losing the American Legion's role in the baseball program, he said, "It won't break my heart if we don't have this program this summer." That is not a commitment to me. And I also just think that after looking at the financial aspects that were brought up at the beginning of the meeting, I think it's been agreed that the program, the baseball program, is very self-supporting. I think it will bring in revenue, which will maybe help offset some of that pool deficit or other problems that need to be addressed. So I guess those were the things that I just wanted to bring back up, and see if you have any questions about that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please step forward and state your name and give your address.
My name's Gary Lofka. I live at 1688 West Center Road, Kingsley. Probably one of the few here was fortunate when the American Legion built those ball fields at the Civic Center. I lived right outside the gate and watched that progress. I coached from T-ball all the way through Babe Ruth in that program. I've been a member of the American Legion for 28 years. To answer her question, I did not know about this meeting last week until 5:45 when Mark Greiner called me. I assume that there should have been more public announcement to it. I don't know. I didn't know about it, or I'd have been here. Anyway, the Legion's policy nationwide is children and youth. We have had children in that program since it started that their parents did not have the money for them to play baseball. The American Legion has always supported that policy. I know Mr. Jones has a figure of 700 kids is gonna bring in X amount of revenue, but what about maybe the 50 or 100 kids that don't have the money to play? Are you gonna pick that up? Is that in your budget to pay for kids that can't play? We do that. Kids and youth are number one, and so are veterans. And I've been involved in this program in 88, 89, and 90. Dr. Stephen Kozelko Sr., myself and Don Gurn ran that baseball program for 3 years, and then Don kept it a couple years after that. We never had a problem until this year. So I would say that whatever you folks decide is good, but the American Legion wants to make sure every kid has a commitment to play baseball, whether they have the money or they don't. And that's about all I have to say. I thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming. Anyone else?
Hello. My name is Jackie Lafka Johnson. That's my dad. And while I do not have children that play in the Legion program because we live in Kingsley, I have grown up listening to Larry Kidd, to my dad, to Larry Butcher, all these men this whole time, and not once have I ever heard anything negative about any of these men. They're all honorable men. They stand up for these kids. They love what they do, and I think taking it away from the Legion is wrong. They like what they do. And I think the personal attacks on Mr. Butcher, and I know you guys have probably heard some of them, are wrong.
What was that?
Excuse me?
I think that was funny.
Let me ask you something. Have you known these men as long as we have? No.
Excuse me,
It was
please
an
address your
offense.
comments to the commission,
Well, I
and
thought
I
that
would
was
appreciate it
rude.
if the audience would remain silent.
So, and I know there's been personal attacks. You know, it should be run on how the program is handled. And Mr. Swager, whom I graduated with, posted some things on Facebook last week that broke my heart regarding these men. And he told me it was not an attack on the American Legion, that it was an attack on Larry Butcher and his partners. Well, his partners include my father and Larry Kidd and Mark Greiner, who are all stand-up guys. So where they're coming up with this stuff, I have no idea. But I can tell you, these men are very dedicated men. They have bent over backwards to help these kids. They have bent over backwards to help veterans in this area, and they will continue to do so. I don't know what the big problem is. I really don't understand it. It ran all this time perfectly. And in this last year, all of a sudden they have problems. And Mr. Swager also said in the Legion notes that this was commented. I type those notes for my father, and while I'm not going to disclose, that's not my place, not once have I ever heard anything negative. My dad and Larry Kidd, if they felt Larry Butcher was doing things he shouldn't be, are guys that would stand up and ask him to step down. They would. They're honorable men. And I just wanted you all to know that the personal attacks regarding this whole thing are wrong. And I hope you don't base your decision on those personal attacks. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming. Is there anyone else that would like to make public comment? Please step forward, state your name, and give your address.
My name is Phil Meeker, and I live at 823 Eaton Street, Kingsley. And in full disclosure, Larry Butcher is my uncle, and I'm proud to say that. I agree with most of what she just said. A lot of what was said last week, I don't think was fair. You're basing a lot of the statement was based on 1 year, and I wasn't privy to a lot of that, so I can't speak to it, but I can tell you that he's been involved with the program for roughly 30 years, 17 of which he has run the program. So if he had a bad year last year and some things were done out of character, I think the odds are still in his favor. That man has dedicated a ton of time on his own dime to these kids, to the vets in the past. Never asked for anything from anybody, okay? My dad left when I was a very young kid, and he stepped in and took over some of that responsibility. And I am who I am today, because of him. So I think a lot of it was unfair. He wasn't informed of this. I'm here on my own accord. He didn't know I was here today. He wasn't informed of this meeting and didn't have an opportunity to speak on his own behalf last week. And I think that's a travesty as well. So I support the American Legion in any way I can, and I support my uncle. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Any additional public comment? Please have a seat, state your name, and give your address.
My name's Larry Butcher, and I live at 5010 Norton Road. And as Phil just said, I have been involved in this program for a lot of years. I was there when Pete's son Joe, I believe it is, came through. And I got a couple questions, Chris. First for you, will this tape be available, or am I going to have to go through a FOIA request?
Mr. Butcher, typically, and I will let everyone know at this time, typically commissions do not respond to public comment, but I will say that the meeting will be available on DVD. It is being recorded and it is being telecast live.
Thank you. Pete, you were a member of the board for how many years? I don't know.
I think it was the first board, Larry, and it was
No, the
probably
first board was
five.
Ward Kuhn.
Oh, was it? I must have taken his place.
Yes.
Probably about 4 or 5 years.
And you wrote the release that we used for the that.
Yep.
During that time, we had the agreement with the county, and at that time, you were probably the foremost attorney in town that knew about the Open Meetings Act, correct? Well, I didn't know anybody else that was, because I followed our city commission meetings. And did you ever tell me that we had to...
Mr. Butcher, you'll excuse me. This isn't really a dialogue opportunity. This is an opportunity for you to make public comment to the commission.
I just want to... There's one deal in here. I'm just going to use one person. Everything about it, Chuck Lurchin, who's the County Veterans Affairs, broke confidentiality when he claimed I was insane. If you look at the police report, you will see that I was never contacted. If you look in there and see part of it, you say, Karen Annis told Jim Wagner, who told Chuck Lurchin. Well, I doubt if Pete would say that was more than hearsay. And then I would ask Mr. Taylor, you've known me for 39 years, and we've had some ups and downs in that 39 years. Have I ever acted insane?
Mr. Butcher, this is not a question and
All right,
answer
well,
for you and the commission.
Well, basically, my hands are being tied, but I'm just saying that everything they did, here's all the emails that I have received over the summer, except for Nikki McFadden, who is Jocelyn Boer's best friend. There is none in here complaining about what me or the Legion was doing. The only ones that are complaining was Lurchin and Swager, who back and forth all the time. So, and as far as being informed of last week's meeting, I would ask Mr. Jones, why weren't we? He had time to put together a report on what equipment's going to cost. He sure has had time to make a phone call or an email to Gary, Larry, Mark, and I. It was not done. So how can we be here if we're not informed? Jason says on his tape, I'm building community. Well, in order to build community, you got to communicate. He doesn't communicate. He had a meeting last fall or the fall before where Barb came in and asked for Field 1 for the softball program. The only reason I knew about what had happened was at that time, Neil Levesey was sitting where Mr. Taylor is sitting right now, and he told me out at the fair when they were having Veterans Night. I know Chris has said, I read it in the paper, she never knows what's going on, and she's the chair of the, well, not that way. I mean, she's the chair of the committee. If he's doing something that Then Dave Taylor, when I talked to him yesterday, he says you give Jason Jones tasks and they never get done. Maybe you should start saying, okay, this is the priority we want, and get it done. You know, it's the same as what we do. First you gotta sign up all the kids. Then you gotta go find coaches and sponsors. I'm done.
Thank you for coming. Is there any additional public comment on baseball at this time? Seeing none, I will, Mr. Swager, please step forward and state your name and address.
Thank you. Michael Swager, 2605 Rock Court, Traverse City, Michigan. Again, thank you for allowing us the time for the public comment, both last week and this week. We appreciate it. And I understand that the comments that I made last week were on video and are available for all of the members who may not have been able to see it last week. So I'm not going to reiterate all of those comments. I'll rely on the videotape. Reference Mr. Greiner's comments today. There was a concern voiced last week about the readiness of the Parks and Rec Committee to take over for the program. And it would be my judgment that they are in better shape and more ready to take over that program than the American Legion is right now. That would be...
Excuse me. I would appreciate it very much if the audience remained silent. This is a gentleman's opportunity for public comment, and I would appreciate it if it was respected. Please continue.
Thank you. I had really not planned on speaking more tonight regarding the past. I thought that had been significantly and satisfactorily addressed last week. I stand by my comments. I have the police reports and I have the emails. I'm not making any of this stuff up. And I will invite anybody to my Facebook. What I said on my Facebook was, we had a meeting, and there was a second meeting on February 18, and the purpose of the meeting is to discuss whether the baseball program should be taken over by Parks and Rec from the American Legion. It's still on my Facebook. I wasn't derogatory to anybody. When Jackie asked me on the Facebook what it was about, I mentioned Mr. Butchers by name. I didn't defame him. It's quite clear how I've reacted to what he did and what he's done to us. And I'm not apologizing for that whatsoever. The one additional point that I did not make last week was that the episode that I described that resulted in me and my family and all of the other people and their families taking their families out of their house at the request and recommendation of the authorities until Mr. Butcher was located. The further request was that we cancel all of the games that night. It was July 6th. I believe it was a Monday. And the authorities requested that until his whereabouts were located and based upon what he had done and the signs that they had described to me of the actions he had taken, it would be in the public safety's best interest to cancel all the baseball games. And we did. At the police's request, we canceled every single game that night. Now, I'm not here to defend whether I'm making this stuff up. What happened last year was unacceptable on any level. And if a person exhibiting those characters, and if a person who sent the sort of emails that he sent last year to parents of baseball players would be allowed to again take over that, be in charge of that position, I think that would be gross negligence as a matter of law. That's my driving concern. My son's no longer in the program. I'm no longer on the board. I don't have any agenda here other than to tell you what is on my conscience and what I believe. I believe that Jason Jones and the Parks and Rec Committee can take over this program and operate it in an efficient and effective manner. I have no quarrel with the American Legion. I have no quarrel with the men and women who serve our country. That is not what this is about. As a matter of fact, one of the members of the American Legion helped us get the program going last year and saved the program with his help, and that was Larry Kidd. Volunteered his time and helped us supervise the fields. I have no qualms whatsoever with the American Legion. I explained in quite detail what happened last week. I have the police reports, and I have the emails, and I have the corporate board minutes to back it up. You are welcome to copies of those. I am speaking tonight on behalf, I believe that the Parks and Rec would be the best organization to run that program, and I would ask you to pass that motion. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Any additional public comment? Please step forward and state your name and give your address.
Thank you. My name is Chris Cook. My address is 15393 Old Bluff Trail, Traverse City. I am a coach in the league, and I've been a coach in the league for, well, since I've been in town for 8 or 9 years. And I will say that as far as my interactions with Larry Butcher, they're always professional. He was always courteous to me. I thought he put an awful lot of time into the program and worked hard to try to make the program go. And I always commended him anytime I saw him about the time he put into the program. I will say this, though. Last year, the wheels fell off the wagon. I'm not sure why. I'm not privy to the internal operations of what happened. It wasn't really disclosed to me. My job was to be a coach. I struggled with 7 players through most of the year, and it's hard when you get these kids in and you have to forfeit games, and the kids that are left, we're trying to patch together a team, and I really didn't get a lot of help from anybody until Mike Swager stepped in and came to me and asked me what was going on, and then helped me get some players so I could field a team. I do remember the day the games were all canceled. It was a disappointment for the kids. And I really felt the scheduling was poor, too. We were scheduled in the wrong fields. We were scheduled at the wrong times. We were told on the day of the game that we were supposed to show up at a different day, at a different time. And I really felt that the program suffered last year. I don't know why. I don't know whose fault it was. And like I said, I wasn't privy to the internal operations. But I thought that my insights from being a coach in the league might be important to your decision.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional public comment?
Do I have to go out there then, or what?
Commissioner Erickson? No, we will make an exception for you.
Well, I love baseball, and I'd like to see as many kids as possible play. Our decision is, does the American Legion run it, or do we take that control back to us and then decide on who's going to run it? Is that the basic question right now?
We're going to make a recommendation to the full Board of Commissioners.
The motion, though, is that the Parks Department...
Is that the Parks Department, that's the motion. Thank you. Anything else?
No.
Okay. Any additional public comment? Before I let you back, Mr. Greiner, is there any additional public comment? Mr. Greiner?
Thank you. Y'all remember who I am, I hope. Again, I'm remiss in that I didn't write down enough stuff and bring it in front of me to report to you. When we discussed this the other evening at the American Legion...
Excuse me.
Thank you. We have determined that American Legion continuing on, there will be a different structure. And I will say this, Larry Butcher has definitely said, I can have the summer off, that's not a problem. So to allay any fears that Larry Butcher would come back, ruin a program, cause problems, disrupt things, I'm sitting here telling you that I'm the man that would be the responsible party. That's not going to happen. We would probably still use some of his skills, knowledge, and abilities. I will not tell you that he would be invisible to the program, but for the general operations of things, Larry would be, pretty much anything he did would go through either myself or whoever the manager director would be. Also, the issue's been brought up several times about the Legion is not ready to carry on. As we discussed last week, I told you within 15 days of being told that we would have an agreement, we would have all the proper pieces in place to take care of and start the season. So we would be about 20 to 30 days behind the schedule of previous years.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Greiner.
Thank you again.
Any additional public comment? Please step forward, state your name, and give your address.
Chuck Lurchin, 1326 Milliken Court. As we all know, this has been going on, and it's coming to a head here right now. And one thing throughout this whole deliberation that I've found very curious and has never been addressed was why the American Legion sought to dissolve the resolution giving them use of the public park fields last year. No one has ever addressed that question. My suspicion is the County Board of Commissioners Committee, Mr. Swager, myself, the other appointed committee members, insisted that it be operated as a public entity, as a board or a committee of the Board of Commissioners. That is the only suspicion that makes sense to me why they would want to dissolve the agreement they already had in place with you, because they are the ones who initiated that. They notified the county that they didn't want to have a committee anymore overseeing the usage of that parkland. And that all happened last year, to my witness, anyways, when that committee called them out on certain things. You have to have public meetings. You have to have minutes. You have to have rules of operation. All the years that any Board of Commissioners appointed committee person was on that board, I can think of no one that ever saw a spreadsheet, a balance sheet, a book of any kind. When the Legion was called out last year and actually told by an official, the Director of Parks and Recreation, you have to act like a board, a committee. That is when they locked up and informed the citizens of Grand Traverse County that they did not wish to have an agreement to run a baseball program anymore. That's the comment that I have. And throughout this whole last year and right up until tonight, that question or those answers have never been asked or addressed. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. No, I'm sorry, Mr. Greiner. All right, one more time.
Gary Lofka, Kingsley, Michigan. I have to interject a thing here. Mr. Lurchin said on September 9th, we had a final baseball meeting. I asked for copies of those minutes, and today, as of today, I still do not have those. So he's talking about minutes, but he does not supply them to me that I have to make a report to the state of Michigan. I don't know how many kids played, I don't know how many games they played, but he is the guy with the minutes, and I don't have them. One meeting, we had a police officer standing outside the door, a city police officer that was a husband of one of the board members, of which I happened to get informed, because a lot of these board meetings I never got informed of. Mr. Lurchin's comment was, well, we don't know how to get a hold of you. Well, I said, well, that's not true, Chuck. I said, I write an article in the American Legion newsletter, my name and phone number is in your house 12 times a year. So you do know how to get a hold of me. Secondly, the agreement we had was nothing to do with not using those baseball fields. It was strictly for the county's liability policy that was negotiated back in '94 or something like that between Mr. Childs and Mr. Butcher to pull all these little groups under one umbrella insurance policy. In that time, somebody from the county requested that these groups get their own insurance. No problem, we can do that. We did it back when I ran the program. All those years we had our own policy. So I don't know where Chuck is coming off all this stuff, but the police report that Mr. Swaggart referred to was filed at 5 o'clock in the afternoon from your county office, Mr. Lurchin's office. The criminal code for that is insanity. The complaint was filed by Mr. Lurchin that Mr. Butcher was suspected of tampering with his girlfriend's telephone line. Now, as a county veteran service officer, his job is to assist veterans. Larry Butcher had the program jerked from underneath him. His girlfriend and him broke up. The guy needed some help. Did he get it from this county office? He did not. He was crucified at that point to where the police went and interviewed his 86-year-old mother, and she didn't even know why they were there. So some of this stuff they referred to, yeah, there's police reports, but some of it was not. That report had absolutely nothing to do with the baseball program. That is a personal vendetta from Lurchin to Mr. Butcher. I worked with Larry Butcher for years and years in the Legion. He's been our commander for 6 years. Everything works fine. Till this year, other than back in about 1989 or 90, when I was involved with the program, was running it, that's the last time we had any problems, and that was due to an attorney that was on the board, would not listen to us in scheduling the playoff games because he'd done it to favor his team. And if anybody was living here then, they would see I have copies of news articles at home. So I can't sit here and let these people run down Larry Butcher or the American Legion. I respect your wanting to take the program over, and we have talked with various other groups to take the program and run it in conjunction, and we will support it. But to sit here and listen to these guys run down the American Legion on this agreement, which is what Mr. Lurchin said, it was only for removing us from the liability insurance policy of the county. That was it. And I know Mr. Greiner was going to say the same thing. And the night they had 2 police officers out in the parking lot, Sheriff Patrol people, the one inside the door, for what reason I do not know. Larry Butcher cut his hair and took his guns down to his cabin in Benzie County. I did not know there was a law against that. But the next meeting, on the minutes, you know what it said? The police officer inside that door was a Sheriff Patrol member. Well, that is not true. And I stated to Mr. Lurchin, if you're going to report the minutes, you report them factually, because I've done it for 6 years for the American Legion. You need to change that. But I would request to this board that Mr. Lurchin provide me with the information I need, a final copy of those minutes, and how many teams and how many kids were in that program, so I can make my report to the state. That's all I have to say. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any additional public comment at this time? Please step forward and state your name and give your address.
My name's John Butcher, and my address is 641 Chickadee Lane, Kingsley, and I am Larry's brother. I want to let you know that up front. This police report that's continually being discussed here and talked about, I was part of that. I was the individual that was being interviewed by the officer when they came out and talked about this. Some of these things that I'm hearing that are coming out here are totally inaccurate. And how that this could be misconstrued and built into what it is beyond me. I just can't believe it. As I said, I was the individual that was being interviewed after the officer went to see my mother, and how this can come out of this and just be built so out of proportion is beyond me. I don't disagree with some of the issues that have been brought. Larry had some very, very difficult times last year, and probably didn't run this program as well as it should have been or the way it has been run in the past. But as Phil mentioned earlier, who is my nephew, Larry has dedicated his life to this program for the last 17 years. And for me to sit here and to listen to all of the Larry bashing that's taking place right now, I can't sit back and listen to it. It's just not correct. It's not true. The man's dedicated his life to it. If this needs to be some changes placed within this program, whether someone else needs to run it, quite honestly, I think it would be the best thing for Larry personally, is that if someone else did. But to take it away from the Legion, from an association that has run this program and run it, as Mr. Dorian said, has done a very good job running it for so many years, just to take it away from them based on this, I think is wrong, and I'd hate to see that happen. My other question, this is kind of a two-part statement, is are we discussing strictly issues here as far as the Legion baseball? To my knowledge, there are other baseball programs within the county, and is the other programs, Blair, Kingsley, is that going to come under this also, or are we just basically discussing what's going to happen with the Legion baseball? I think it would be unfair to these other organizations to be included in regards to this. If this is going to be done by the county, I think that it should be county-wide, and all baseball programs should be taken over in regards to this, not just one that's had a bad year. Thanks.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? Please step forward, state your name, and give your address.
My name is Chris Pena, 2160 East Gatsky Road, Cedar. I kind of feel like I just dropped out of the sky here. I've been a photographer for 30 years. I've photographed the Legion for, I think, 7 or 8 years. Other baseball leagues, Blair before it was East. And this summer, there was a very distinct change in the organization, who to talk to when I had problems and issues. I have to say that, and perhaps because I don't have children playing in American Legion, I did not hear from either American Legion nor from parents and coaches anything in a sense that was derogatory, that anyone was taken over anything, and perhaps because I was an outsider in that sense. But what I have to say is that I was not a party to accusations or behaviors or incidents. All I was told is that basically we've had a glitch, there is a problem, and it basically is confidential, and it really is not information that any one of us is at liberty to discuss with you. So whatever kind of is fine, I have to say that I've been a photographer for programs that run a little bit more efficiently, and many more programs that be run less efficiently. But I did not hear any character assassinations or any defense of what has been going on. So, and perhaps, like I said, because I'm not a parent, or perhaps I'm not a coach, I'm just kind of just a business entity that's interacted with American Legion. But, you know, in a sense, I am very pleasantly surprised that I didn't hear any hearsay, that I didn't hear any rumors. It was simply stated, there is a problem, we are dealing with a problem, and we'll assist you in any way that we can to fulfill your contract. And that's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, I will bring it back to the commission. Commissioners, who would like to start, if there is any comment on the motion? Commissioner Doran?
We know some things. We know that the Legion ran the program for many, many years, is the creator of it, ran it really well. We know that at least last year, or several years before that, was run very, very poorly. If our director had run the program the way that it was run last year, we would be asking for his resignation, even though he promised never to do it again. But if our director was running the program last year, when these things happened, there would have been an accountability, that we would have been able to deal with the problems as they came up. Call Dennis Aloya if the director is not running it. Talk to Christine Max, come to public comment. There would have been financial accountability. We go out and solicit money from the parents. There is a scholarship program, and I hopefully expect to try to continue that with the county as well. But there would be financial accountability for this program. There's 900 kids, plus all of their parents. I think the time has come now for the junior baseball program to be run by a public entity that has paid people. If somebody's going to hire a seasonal employee to assist the students, I think that should be the county. I think it should be because of the accountability, because of the treasures, our kids that we're putting out there. and just their love of baseball, too. It's no fun to have a game canceled or have that happen, or have insufficient players on your team, or have rosters juggled, et cetera, and I've heard that beyond this room from coaches. Not just what I've heard in this room, I've heard that from people. Larry ran a terrific program. I really liked working with Larry when I was on the board, but I always thought to myself, why isn't the county doing this? And Larry, if the county said, hey, we want to take it over, back when I was involved, I would say, hey, that's great. Because the demands that this makes on a volunteer organization such as the Legion are incredible. Just the squabbles between the coaches and the parents, I mean, it's, how do you deal with that? I think that the time has come for the county to deal with it, and to sincerely, as the motion, say thank the American Legion for all their efforts, but to now take this program and to make it a Grand Traverse County Parks and Recreation Department program. So I'm going to still vote for the motion. I don't know what will happen with this motion. I don't know what will happen when it gets, because this is just a recommendation of the county board. I hope they follow it. But nothing I've heard tonight has indicated to me that we should do otherwise.
Mr. Taylor.
Excuse me, a couple of questions for Jason. If we take this over, are we going to have the philosophy that all kids play? And if there's 50 to 100 kids that can't afford to play, what are we going to do about that?
It would be my suggestion to this board to include in the motion for us to run baseball, that it'd be a recreational league that everybody that's on the team plays. And that's something that I would like to see included in the motion and included in the minutes, because that's the philosophy American Legion had with this program. That's how this program was initially established, and that's the true philosophy of a Parks and Recreation Department. So that's the way it should be run. If this board, I can present this board with a budget, which, as Dean mentioned earlier, is a financial plan for how the league will run. If this board wants us to set up a scholarship program for this program, by all means, I welcome that. A scholarship program when we offer programs, or a scholarship program when we offer recreational activity, is something that's a standard practice in most Parks and Recreation departments. And if we're going to behave more like a Parks and Recreation department and industry standard, we should follow those same standards.
Thanks.
Asking me?
Do you have any comments, Commissioner Erickson?
None.
All right. Commissioner Larson.
I guess we have the motion that's on the table. I would like to at least throw out that there are other ways of looking at it besides that as a necessary solution. It appears that the American Legion has had a long history of running this program effectively. The problems that were evident last year, according to the testimony, seem to be based on one or a couple of individuals. Those individuals are not on trial here. The program is what's at issue. So I guess I look at it, we can do four different things. We can either maintain the status quo and do essentially nothing, which is doing something. We can respond to Mr. Greiner's suggestion for a new partner, recognizing at the meeting last week the YMCA volunteered support and expertise in that area. As the motion has indicated, the Grand Traverse County Park and Rec Department can pick this up, or there could be some sort of arrangement where the American Legion continues to run it, perhaps with a partnership with Grand Traverse County Park and Rec, or with greater oversight or greater controls, or some sort of checks and balances. I'm not particularly advocating for one of those positions. I just want to caution about immediately proceeding down one simple course before making a decision.
Anyone else?
It just seems that their time is a factor in this too, so.
All right. I have a couple of comments. I will not be supporting this motion. I believe that there is another way, and that is an RFP. And the Parks Department can respond to the RFP. The YMCA can respond to the RFP. The American Legion, in partnership with the YMCA, can respond to the RFP. Werfel Park can respond to the RFP. Little League can respond to the RFP. I believe there's a better option. I have a question about the spreadsheet that Jason gave us last week. One of the things that I'm not seeing on here, for instance, are background checks. And I did check with Commission on Aging, and background checks cost the Commission on Aging $50 and I'm just saying, there are some things on the spreadsheet that I'm not seeing that I think should be there. Background checks. If this is a county-run program, the county is going to, in all likelihood, ask for all employees to be background checked. Commission on Aging presently pays $50 for a background check. Commission on Aging does FBI, county, and state police. They pay for the fingerprinting for FBI. The other two background checks are run through Human Resources, and those are billed back to the department in indirect costs. That's not on here. Field maintenance. Background checks are here. $40. That's a team. I stand corrected. Background checks are on here. I don't think it's accurate, but that's just based on Commission on Aging's costs. Field maintenance. I just have a lot of questions before we move forward. Now again, if we do an RFP, the Parks Department and Jason can put together a complete package, and he can bid just like everyone else does for the baseball program. And the best baseball program wins. So I will not be supporting it for that reason.
Question?
Certainly.
I agree that sounds like a very good idea. What about the time issue? How do you deal with the fact that we're pushed up against when this has to happen, needing to send out a request for proposal, give them time to produce a proposal, take in the proposals, evaluate the proposals, award the bid, and then proceed forward? Does baseball, is it the summer of no baseball?
We'll have to move fast. I understand that the speed of government generally does not do that, but that doesn't mean it can't be done. Okay, we have a motion and support on the floor. All those in, Commissioner Byrne?
Well, I would almost like to make an amendment to this motion. And I don't know if this is the appropriate time to do that, or we take a vote on this motion. And the amendment that I would like to make is that running this program as a recreational league where everyone plays in line with American Legion rules, something to that effect. In listening to all of the comments tonight, I don't feel that Grand Traverse County wants to pull the rug out from the American Legion on baseball. We were brought a concern by the public, and that concern was that the youth baseball program that is currently using the fields at the Grand Traverse County Civic Center has had some difficulties that are affecting the youth. Our industry is recreation. We are the Grand Traverse County Parks and Recreation Board. Within our industry, we serve our public. And when our public comes to us with a need, we need to act on that need. If the need is that there is something that is being offered right now, and there are some struggles with it, and we are a better entity to handle that, I feel that's where we are. There is a time and a place, and I feel the time is now for a new direction, and I feel the place is Grand Traverse County Parks and Recreation. Along with that, there are other programs in the county, and I'm sure that they are not run 100% perfectly. We were faced with the program that is run on our fields. And as a recreational entity here in Grand Traverse County, it would be a recreational program, meaning that every child has the opportunity to play. Right now, we have a scholarship program in swimming, which allows children to have the opportunity to swim if they don't have the means to pay for it. I think that is something that is very easily instituted and can be instituted, and I have the utmost confidence that our director can handle that and can do that. But I feel in this motion, it does need to state that the program, if we were to take it over, would be an Everyone Plays program. And if anybody would like to interject any specific wording to that.
Commissioner Doran.
That certainly was the intent of the motion, and I would consider that a friendly amendment. And I think Chris seconded it, so I think
She
that we
did.
can. And I'd suggest this language at the end, according to the recreational baseball principles of the American Legion.
Commissioner Byrne, is that acceptable to you?
Yes.
Okay, we have an amended motion on the floor. Any other additional commissioner comments? I have one brief one. While I support that aspect of the motion, I do have a concern. We have soccer. Not every child can afford to play soccer. We have an ice rink, Howe Arena. Not every child can afford to skate in the ice rink. We have a swimming pool. Not every child can afford to swim. And the reason we have a scholarship program is due to the generosity of the Grand Traverse Band. So I just wanted to clarify that. Jason?
I just have a comment to make about the motion. In the motion you mentioned, could you read the last portion?
According to the recreational baseball principles of the American Legion.
In the event that we take this program on, we will be affiliating ourselves with a national program. Which one, I'm not sure yet. But the way the motion reads, and if you guys would like to clarify differently, it sounds like we have to follow American Legion baseball standards. And I'd like us to have the opportunity.
Principles.
Could we leave it at recreation? Everyone plays recreational ball. I don't want this motion to limit us, 20 years from now to saying we have to play American Legion rules baseball.
Well, perhaps we could just say, according to the two recreational baseball principles, period.
Right.
Understanding that means everybody plays, the coach tries to get everybody in the game and give everybody an opportunity to play baseball.
Absolutely.
I would just like to make a comment. I understand that we have a soccer program in our county, and I also understand we have a hockey program. Those are not programs that are run by the county. Those are private entity. So this would be something new for us, run through our county, giving us an opportunity to serve our county and to serve the children who live here.
Okay, we have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Roll call, please.
Christine Byrne,
Yes.
Bob Karsten,
Yes.
Peter Doran,
Yes.
Richard Erickson,
Yes.
Al Larson,
No.
Kevin's not here, Jerry Ruskowski,
Yes.
Dave Taylor,
No.
Me.
that's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 2.
You don't vote?
Chris Maxbauer,
No.
that's 5 to 3.
Next on the agenda, Lutra report. Kim?
Before we leave that, Chris, and while we've got these people in the audience, what happens next to this recommendation, Jason? Where does it go, and when's it going to be considered by the county?
I've spoken with County Administrator Dennis Loy in regards to this issue, and he said, according to him, this can go from this committee directly to the Board of Commissioners next Wednesday.
Commissioner Doran, at Ways and Means, yesterday, I requested that this agenda item be placed on the end of the month board meeting, so it will be the last Wednesday of this month,
At what time?
7 p.m.
Okay. And where?
in this room,
Okay, thank you.
for anyone wishing to attend.
That's next Wednesday.
The next regular Board of Commissioners meeting, baseball will be on the agenda for discussion. The meeting is held here in this room at 7 p.m., the last Wednesday of every month. Please come to more than just one. Okay, next on the agenda, Lutra, Kim, and thank you very much for this matrix.
Yeah, there is a new matrix sitting in front of you. It has been requested of me that this is the format that you get the report every month, so you will see this instead of what is currently in there. And it shows the date projects were started, what's currently in progress, and dating things that have already been completed. In addition to some of those Lutra recommendations, currently working on the letter of agreement with the swim team. It's in the final stages, and I hope to get it to them by the end of this month. One of the things on the Lutra report was reduce hourly labor expenses, and I am currently working with Human Resources to instill a lifeguard step in the payroll system, thus in the long term lowering hourly wages, and it will also give our staff things to work toward. Instead of just coming on as a guard at a particular wage, they will work their way up a ladder. I kind of briefly mentioned it last week, but last month, I'm sorry. I've been working with the master's program to either establish them as a USA Masters team, where they would pay rent to the pool just as the breakers do, or kind of giving away that pool space to them that they currently use. It would just be used as lap swim and not specifically for masters as the pool's being used now. They've been given a deadline of June to decide what they're going to do. And Pool Advisory Committee, we'll hit that later on the agenda. And then as well as working on events. I mentioned it, I think, every meeting I'm at, but the underwater egg hunt that is scheduled for April 2nd. I've also started a June 5th, it's a Saturday date, where I've started in the beginning planning stages of an event that will be called Water Poolooza. And I just spoke with the Coast Guard earlier this week, and they have agreed to be involved in the event as well. And I'm working with the Red Cross, too, so.
The one thing I'm not seeing, and please call my attention to it, since we just got this matrix tonight, I may have missed it, the status of the membership agreement for when people sign to up for a year membership or a 6-month membership?
It says sell true 52-week memberships. Is that what you're alluding to?
No, I'm alluding to the liability waiver.
It is on there. It's number 2, install liability release procedures for all users.
Thank you. Kim, when do you anticipate that one is going to be completed?
I'm not finding a lot of pools that use it other than his. So I'm still researching it to see how other people do it. But Jason and I will be working on it, and I don't have a specific date for you, but it is something that we've been working on.
Okay.
One of the items we're discussing right now in regards to the liability waivers is whether we utilize a person-by-person one-time waiver, or whether we utilize a gang waiver where we'd have the same waiver every time when someone comes in, similar to the sign-in sheet we have now, where it would have a short explanation of the waiver, and then have room for 20, 30 people sign each day. So that's one of the things we're discussing right now.
Okay. Commissioner Taylor.
I was under the understanding that that liability form was something that a lot of pools used, I guess. And then I've been kind of waiting for that to get done, and now you're saying that's not something they normally do in other pools.
I've been researching it and talking to pool managers that I know and calling some outside pools where they say, well, this pool might use it, and I'm not finding it as a common thing, no.
Okay, I guess I'm sorry, because I thought it was very common, and we were just dragging our feet, but... okay.
It's something that I think I may have alluded to the fact that it's more common than it is, and that was through my discussions with Dave at Lutra. So I may have unintentionally misled the board to the extent that those waivers are used.
Okay.
So I apologize for that.
Thanks for clearing that up.
Commissioner Larson?
I know that our intent is not to discuss every single item on here, and that's,
No.
so I'm not getting into that. I would ask, I have experienced liability waivers at one pool I've been to down in Texas, and then the other question I would ask is, do those really stand up in court? And we sign liability waivers for everything. You go to an amusement park, you go skiing, I just don't have any belief that they actually
Yeah.
hold up. So I don't need an answer, it's really a rhetorical question.
Yeah, that's actually at conference. I attended Jim Wheeler's sessions. He was the aquatics professional that they brought in, and I have sent him an email asking that as well.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Doran?
We had a very unfortunate drowning in the bay a number of years back, and the liability waiver was, the Judge Brown at the time said that the jury could consider it. So it didn't have absolute effect, but it did have some effect that the parents had said that there was no responsibility there. So.
Okay. Any other questions for Kim? Commissioner Doran?
We had a member of the public talk about something as simple as putting in lane markers.
Lane lines.
Lane lines?
Yeah, I drafted a letter this week. Some of it is getting the lap swim to correctly go around the lane. And so I've drafted a letter for the public so that when they see the lane lines in and everything, that it's all in one thing for them.
And that letter is?
It's drafted, and we'll go to Jason tomorrow or Monday for his review of it.
Probably
so.
send it out next week sometime?
Hopefully, yeah.
Any other questions for Kim? I have just one. Kim, at the last Board of Commissioners committee meeting, the county administrator noted that when you were taking a look at your holiday hours and the income from holidays, you said that we had $426 in revenue, and he asked for the expenditure side. Do you have that number yet?
I didn't bring it. I did look at the staffing, and the staffing wasn't any different than last year, which would affect the income there, so.
Okay.
But I didn't prepare that and bring that with me tonight.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. The true membership that Lutra recommends.
52-week, yeah.
I went in to renew my membership, which I paid for in March of last year, and I found out that my renewal is up in June. So I think it's something that really we need to take a look at. Because most facilities have true 12-month memberships, so I just wanted to make that comment. Anything else? Moving on to the Rules Committee.
How do we find out what membership entails? And there's a lot of these things about the pools that I hear people talking about, but I'm not really sure of their import because I don't know what that all entails, a membership. And does this allow a person to use the pool?
I'll let Kim explain that.
As far as if you buy a pool membership, what?
Yes.
Yeah, the pool membership allows you to come into the open swim, family swim, and lap swim times, use the shower facilities and the sauna.
Okay, and if you don't have a membership, then you pay each time.
You pay a drop-in fee, correct.
Moving on to the Rules Committee. Commissioner Doran was kind enough to draft some bylaws and present them to the Rules Committee. And at the Rules Committee, we did ask that those bylaws be distributed for our consideration for future meetings. I would prefer to hold off on discussion of the bylaws and put it on next month's agenda. That will give the public an opportunity to come and comment on the bylaws if they have any comments. And it will also allow commissioners time to make suggestions to the suggested bylaws. Commissioner Doran.
Yeah, the bylaws would replace the amended Parks and Recreation Commission local rules that we all got in our packets. And the reason it came about is we wanted to call a special meeting for that baseball issue, and there wasn't any rule or bylaw that told us how to call a special meeting. So, but we did it anyway, and but we realized there was some things. Bob Cooney told me that the rules need to be changed. He couldn't find any evidence that the rules that we had adopted or that prior commissions adopted ever got approved by the County Board of Commissioners, which is a requirement. So I just took the liberty of drafting something up and getting the ball rolling on that, and you all can tear it apart and change it as you see appropriate, and maybe next meeting we can vote on something and then send them on to the County Board of Commissioners and see what they do.
Okay, can I have a point of clarification, Commissioner Doran? Now, we'll be using Robert's rules
Yes.
as stated. So as that goes, the head of the commission would not vote unless there's a tie. Would that be correct on motions? Because Robert's rules, that is a stated motion.
I'm not familiar with that part of Robert's rules.
Because that, and again, it's,
I guess I
I would
can
like to have a
have
point of clarification for that, please.
Okay.
We've had that discussion.
Commissioner Ruskowski, I did call the county's legal counsel, Bob Cooney, and he did say that I may vote, just as the chairman of the county board may vote on issues. And consequently, I intend to vote. I was elected, I was not appointed, and I have to answer to the public. And in order to answer to the public, they need to know my stance on issues. So unless there is some specific opinion from the county prosecutor that I cannot vote, and I have not heard that to date, I do intend to vote.
But could I please get a clarification on Robert's rules, if that is allowed or not? I mean, our old one we had from, 67 rules did state that the chairman did vote. Robert's rules, under my understanding, states that the chairman does not.
Jason.
I know that's going back from the 67, I think 67, don't quote me on that agreement.
Jason?
I've never been, I never had a public body where the mayor or the chairman didn't vote, so I'm not familiar with that at all.
Jason, would you ask Mr. Cooney to supply a written response to Commissioner Ruskowski's question for our next month meeting?
Sure.
Thank you. Moving on. Scholarship Committee, I was unable to attend. Commissioner Byrne, would you please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Certainly.
Just to let the commission know, Commissioner Doran also sent these rules to Bob Cooney for his review over the course of the next month. So when we talk about bylaws next month, I should have some additional information from Bob Cooney to move forward with. Thank you.
Mr. Byrne, scholarship.
At our last scholarship meeting, we were working on a flyer to send out to Traverse City area public schools. We selected 5 schools that we were getting the flyers to 2nd and 3rd grade students. We originally sent a letter, and TCAPS had asked to have it in flyer form, and that we allow every student to apply for our scholarship, and being that we want to meet the needs of our community, we responded with changing some wording in our flyer, and that, I believe, has gone out to the schools as of last week. with President's Day, things like that. Those flyers may not hit the children's Friday folders till tomorrow. So with that, the intention is that those flyers will go out. Parents will have the opportunity to apply for a scholarship to be used to cover the cost of swim lessons, starting with the March session.
April session.
April session.
Spring session.
Spring session. And for Al and Peter, just in case you're unaware, this is for second and third grade students entering a level 1 or 2 swim class. And this is the scholarship that was granted to us from Grand Traverse County Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians. So, and we originally had sent out the information to members of only the band, and we received 5 responses. With that, we've gone out to the general public, so that's where we're at right now. Just waiting to get some applications back.
Any questions for Commissioner Byrne? Commissioner Karstens?
I don't know if it's necessarily just to you, but being a new person, do the scholarship committee deliberate on scholarships just for the swimming, or is this broader?
This was a grant that was written by Commissioner Max Bauer. The grant was awarded for $7,500 for use for children who have not had the opportunity to learn to swim. So it was specified for swimming, and it is handled through the county and through this board.
Okay. So it's funded by a grant?
It's funded by a grant, correct.
Commissioner Taylor?
These committee meetings, are these closed meetings or open meetings?
No,
or
these are open meetings.
Public can attend?
Yep.
They're posted?
Do you
They
have
are
comment
posted.
periods?
Yes.
Yes, we have only had one member of the public come.
Okay.
Other than that, yeah.
Commissioner Larson?
I have a question. I'm a little confused now. You just described the grant money. And were there restrictions on who could participate in the program from the grant?
Well, there's kind of a gray area in that. The grant was written that the money would be used for
Disadvantaged
children.
And at-risk children.
And at risk. And also, there was, I don't have the grant in front of me, but also the community of the band.
Although Grand Traverse Band children are at risk just by their heritage. They have a higher rate
of drowning.
Of risk of drowning. So they are an at-risk group. And I did specify in the grant that we would target Grand Traverse Band specifically.
Thank you.
Their children.
That clears it up.
Commissioner Ruskowski?
Well, I hate to add more work, but
Why not?
since we've talked about baseball, and we've talked, one of the comments came up by people with scholarships. I don't know, just point of discussion, no motion. Since we already have a scholarship committee, now, when we get to the point where whatever the county commission works or decides, we already have a committee set up that can look at, scholarships for scholarships. We might have to give underneath their umbrella scholarships for Little League, where if we get to the point where we then would have to solicit other grants or other activities or other areas, other programs to fund those.
Absolutely.
So we already have the umbrella set up for baseball on that.
Commissioner Karstens?
Just Little League and the league that the county is taking over aren't the same?
Correct.
Okay. And so, anyway, it's kind of complex.
Okay.
I'm just wondering whether the money
Certainly.
from, if there's money left over at the end, when all the obligations are taken care of to meet the needs of the American Legion, will that excess money then be used to fund scholarships or whatever to enable those people who can't afford to pay, who want to pay? Is that how that will be taken care of?
Based on the givens that we have, or that I understand for what would be the county's Parks and Recreation, or County Parks and Recreation's baseball program, even with an initial investment of approximately $19,000 for equipment to field these teams, it looks as though we could have up to a $7,000 profit. If we don't fund equipment for those players, it could be $27,000. Going into year 2, if we equip the teams with proper protective equipment, including catcher's equipment, batting helmets, baseballs, things of that nature, we would budget annually. We would budget replacement of specific equipment, so the second year of the program would be less expensive as far as expenditures are concerned. And in the second year, it looks as though we could make approximately $17,000 in profit. So if this commission determined that scholarships were important enough for the baseball program, and I would encourage this commission to think that way, that we could forego some of the profit established by this program in order to offer scholarships to kids that meet specific criteria that we established beforehand.
Thank you for the update. Any additional comments or questions?
I'm still not clear in that. Part of our motion was that everybody be able to play. And
Yes.
so that you wouldn't really need scholarships because everybody's going to be able to play, correct?
The everybody play is,
Or does that mean everybody who can pay?
well, Little League is set up differently than a recreational league.
Yeah, I'm
and
talking
that's-
about just American Legion.
Commissioner Ruskowski.
I think when you're talking about playing, when you're dealing more with the American Legion, is you're there, you play.
Right.
It's recreation, it's the skills building, it's the activities for
Exactly.
that. Well, Little League works towards, at the end you have all-star teams to go on to compete to win.
Right.
And at that time, in the Little League area, you might not get the playing time in, because other people might be playing to win ahead of that. And there's two different
Yeah, I
organizations for the
agree.
philosophy of
So
that. So when everyone plays, the statement is, you're on a team, you play.
Right, and I understood that to be just under the American Legion. Did I misspeak and call it American Legion Little League?
That was maybe then. Little League, we have an established Little League program that is affiliated with the National Little League.
And I'm not
What we're talking about, and they're very competitive. They would have a first-string catcher and a second-string catcher.
I'm not asking questions about that. I was wondering primarily about...
The motion?
Because our motion said everybody plays, and so I don't understand the need for scholarships with regard to American Legion if everybody's going to play.
The motion, and my intention with adding that everyone plays, is that if you are on a team, you have just as much opportunity as the number one player being the least best player. The scholarship entity of that is not part of the motion.
I would like to move our agenda along, if you don't mind. We can have a scholarship discussion perhaps at our next meeting if you'd like to have one, and if you don't mind. Thank you. Any additional information that you want to share about the committee meeting, Commissioner Byrne?
No, we'll just keep you updated as we move forward.
Next item on our agenda is fees, and that is on page 14 of your packet. Unless we are prepared to discuss recommendations at this meeting, I would like to either move it to a later meeting. We've already sat here almost 2 hours. Or I would like the board's feeling on whether or not we should put together 3 commissioners plus staff to discuss whether these fees need to be reviewed, adjusted, et cetera. So I would just like to hear from the commissioners how they want to proceed, if they want to proceed, regarding fees. Hearing nothing from commissioners,
Sorry. If you do set up a committee, I'd like to serve on it.
Commissioner Doran?
Well, I would probably rely most on staff's recommendation as to whether the market might create a change in these fees.
You're next, hang on. One of the things I did hear at the MRPA conference was the necessity for business plans. And I heard this from Parks Department managers who actually did write business plans for their parks. And one of the presentations was from Oakland County, and one of the things that Oakland County did is they had set fees throughout the year. And they were just set, very similar to ours. Their business plan forced them to look at supply and demand. And clearly, a campsite is more in demand in July than it is in January. And so they adjusted their fees accordingly. I would agree with you if we had business plans for our parks, but we don't. However, that being said, if it is the committee's wish to continue with these fees and allow staff to make recommendations, I certainly will honor that. Commissioner Larson?
No, my opinion is that the fees should be looked at frequently. There are a number of issues that go into setting fees. One of them is the cost of providing the service. One of them is whether the county is choosing to make a conscious decision to subsidize provision of that service by offering it less than market value or less than the cost of production, so to speak, of that thing. Supply and demand is an issue, as well as competitors' rates and what's fair. So yes, it's a complicated process. I am unfamiliar with how often these are looked at or updated. I think it would be a great exercise to go through and look at all of our fees and ensure that they're appropriate.
Jason, when was the last update of our fees?
It's been at least 2 years. I've been here for 3 years, and we have not updated our fees since then. So it's been a while, and it's time that we do it. That being said, you mentioned Oakland County earlier. Oakland County is the most successful Parks and Rec department in the state, and they have close to 100 full-time employees. I'm all for adjusting our fees and looking at our fees again, but with myself, Marilyn, and Kim, predominantly myself and Marilyn, dealing with other issues related to all of our parks, our pavilions, our campsites, etc., I'm going to ask this commission to wait for this project. I've got at least 16 other projects that take up a significant amount of my time. And I've asked this commission, and I've asked the county administrator, and I've asked the Board of Commissioners for prioritization on those issues. And I'm very frustrated that I can't achieve any of them because I have to dabble in each. So it's my request that this commission move forward with a strategic plan and move towards business plans for our parks. By all means, that's how we're going to get ahead. But let's take care of some of the other issues. Let's take care of a strategic plan so I understand what this board is speaking, or what this board wants is one voice, and know the prioritization based on that strategic plan, moving towards adjustment in fees, moving towards business plans, and moving towards a repositioning of our Parks and Recreation Department to be a sustainable entity into the future.
What about referring this to the strategic planning meeting?
I think that would be an excellent idea. I do believe that we have got to take a look at our fee structure. As I noted earlier when Dean Bott was here, the county's contribution to the Parks Department is dropping. And I believe that it's the role of this board to make recommendations to the county board with staff input on fees.
Can I ask a question of Jason?
Of course.
We talked in our January meeting about, and I had mentioned doing a strategic planning meeting, like an all-day strategic planning meeting. Have you moved forward with that? I know you were talking with Paula.
Commissioner Byrne, that's number 7 on our...
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
It's coming down the pike.
Okay, great.
I'll move then to refer the fee issues to the strategic planning meeting for further discussion.
Is there support?
Support.
Discussion. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Budget discussion, do we really need to have this? I noticed it's crossed out on our agenda. We've already discussed about the budget.
That's why it's got the strike through.
Just checking. Next item on the agenda, pool private lessons. Jason has distributed a motion policy, so I will pass it on to you, Jason.
At the January meeting, this commission suggested a policy, and Kim worked on this. Her and I discussed it, and we understand the policy that this commission made to be paid private swim lessons are prohibited when taught by private individuals or companies during public swim times, except with the permission of the Parks and Recreation Director. If this is the language that this commission approves, and it's what we took from the minutes.
So this doesn't cover the babysitter, the nanny that's has the kids there because they're not being paid to teach swimming lessons.
Correct.
Okay. We made a motion before, so I don't think it's necessary to rehash it. Next on the agenda, strategic planning update. Jason.
Based on the recommendation of this commission during our January meeting, I spoke with Paula Segal and frankly tried to find a different way to skin the strategic planning cat. And I'll be honest with you. Paula's observations of working with our Parks and Recreation Commission over the past year or so, and the way our meetings have been segmented. We met for an hour and a half each month. She's concerned that it's created some disjointedness within the commission and broken things up to such a small manner that we can't see the whole picture here. Her suggestion would be for her and I to work on a draft strategic plan utilizing what we've established over the course of the past year with a mission statement, our vision statement, and the key items for discussion that we've talked about in our commission meetings. While her and I worked on this draft plan, she would do some more research and talk to each of the individual commissioners. We could put together a draft plan, and then I would suggest that we meet as a commission for a half day for everybody to sit down and make edits, make changes, add to, delete items from that strategic plan in order to create buy-in with the draft being based on mission that this commission was unanimous on a few months ago. That's kind of the way she feels as though it would work best for our commission. It would definitely allow us to, or allow her and I to work on some opportunities or work on some language in order to propel this commission in our department into an area of repositioning and into an area where we show the benefit to the community versus just being an activity and custodial focused organization.
Commissioner Doran.
How are you going to know, if you do it that way, how are you going to know what Jerry thinks is important and Al and me? How are you going to factor that into to your draft of that strategic plan?
It's one of the things that I would ask Paula to talk with each of you in regards to. I can certainly put down some ideas because this is the type of these are the issues that I'm dealing with on a daily basis. And that's something I'd rely on Paula to talk with, especially the new commissioners, but would be able to take some notes and take some direction from the conversations that have happened at other meetings. And then we'd all come together and kind of edit and review that plan.
Commissioner Larson?
I'm supportive of that recommendation, Jason. I think that my opinion is that the Park and Rec Director is in the best position to lay out a framework for the strategic plan and then to bring a recommendation from which we can then deviate, modify, and set the way. So I'm supportive of that recommendation.
Thank you.
Mr. Karstens.
Well, just traditionally from a planning perspective, usually you have a master plan, and the strategic plan then is made to enact or implement the master plan. And in reading this, to me, this doesn't have a real vision. It's more like a description of what exists. And so the purpose of a plan is to say, what do we want to become? And you should have some values that underpin it, and then go from the values to the explicit policies and things like that. And actions to support that. And then the strategic plan implements the vision, the values, the policy and actions recommended by the master plan. And so I'm a little bit, it's like you need some prioritization, and I can understand why you would be confused, but it seems to me that you need a plan first, and you have to have your values and your vision there. And then from that, get your policies and actions, and then have a strategic plan to implement it. And so I'm confused about, we need to do something. This is dated, and plus it's a description. There's no vision. And so I'm just a new person here, but I'm confused, and I think you need to go in an orderly fashion. It's too bad, because we're kind of, basically I heard you say that we're being reactive as a park. You're being reactive constantly rather than proactive. And the plan and the vision and the values would provide you with the basis to become proactive. And so I think that's what I would say I'd like to see done. But
I have a question for you, Jason. If you don't know what this board's goals and objectives are, how are you going to formulate a strategic plan?
What I said is I'll put together a draft strategic plan. I'll suggest some goals to this commission. And it's up to this commission, and maybe I create 20 goals. And if this commission likes 5, we move with 5.
Quite honestly, I don't, and this is just purely my opinion, I don't believe that it is staff's role to set goals and objectives. I believe it's a commission and a board's job to set goals and objectives. And it is up to the staff then to determine how best to achieve those goals and objectives, and write the strategic plan based on those goals and objectives. And we have 2 new commissioners that have not expressed what their goals and objectives are. Commissioner Doran?
You know, I never quite understand, I'll admit it, what a strategic plan is. I never could seem to get my arms around it. I know what we need is we need to have a consensus among the commission for 2010. What are the 5 or 10 most important things for staff to get accomplished in that, so that they don't go, doing things that we haven't prioritized. I don't know if that's a strategic plan or not, but I'd like to see us establish something just for 2010, and for top on my list is going to be to update that master plan document, and that'll give us a longer range basis for our plans.
I do have a copy of, and I can't pronounce it, it's a county in Virginia, and it's a strategic plan that was used by the county board and given to the county board as an extremely good example of a strategic plan. And it does list goals and objectives. And I would be more than happy to pass this on to staff and have them copy the commissioners so that they can take a look and get a clearer idea of really kind of what a strategic plan is. But again, I do think we need a session to set goals and objectives for staff. Jason, you just said you've got 16 priorities. You don't know what your priorities are. Well, I think that's this board's job to give you those priorities and to give you a clear target, because you can't hit a target unless you know what it is. So I would like to see us at least have that discussion before you start work on a strategic plan. Commissioner Carstens.
Some months ago, I came and participated in a master plan for Maple Bay, but that master plan was made without them taking into consideration the legal constraints. And so for us to be making a plan that affects the nature reserve or any of the other places, we don't know what the legal constraints are, I don't believe. and neither do you. And you kind of have to know all of those things. And so, and I heard somewhere, was it you that mentioned that possibly the COG might be helpful to us at a reasonable fee?
Yes, I spoke briefly with Commissioner Karstens before the meeting, and we had a master plan discussion. We agreed we have to have a master plan. Our master plan expired in 2008, and if we're going to, it will help us as we request grant funding. And what I was telling Commissioner Karstens was I've been doing some research, and the Northwest Michigan Council of Governments, known as COG, did Leelanau County's master plan. Leelanau County put out an RFP, and COG responded, and they got the bid. Matt McCauley, I am told, from COG, did the master plan. I am also told, and I haven't read it, I'm also told that he did an excellent job, and it was at an extremely reasonable fee. Very, very inexpensive, as master plans
Do you know what
generally
that
go.
fee was?
I do not. As I mentioned, I have not had a chance to really research it.
The state law says that counties and townships have to have a master plan, and it has to be updated every basically 6 years. And part of that master plan is a park and recreation plan. And there's a street plan that also isn't an absolute necessity, but it's recommended.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I'm not sure whether or not the Parks and Recreation Plan is mandated as well, but it makes sense that you have a plan. And so it's kind of, we need to do it and get our ducks in order.
Yeah, it does need to be a priority. Commissioner Ruskowski?
Well, again, what we've been working on the strategic plan, on my viewpoint, because I've been working on it for over a year, was the goal setting, was the direction of where we want this Parks and Recreation Department to be. And sort of just the opposite of what Mr. Carr said, then we would use that to use it to build our master plan, to use it to say, okay, this is where we want to go. So I have a hard time, this is our master plan, without direction. Well, the strategic plan we were working on was going to give us our direction. And then from that direction, we were to build our master plan of what we want to see. See, without direction, a master plan doesn't go anywhere.
A master plan usually has to be based on some degree of public input, and that's where you establish your vision, your values of your community.
Right.
And then from there, that's where then you draw your goals and objectives from those values and from the community.
But we're
vision.
looking at the strategic plan more as what do we as a commission want to see?
Right.
They use that as guidance for it first.
But usually the vision is provided by the community. It should be a bottom-up rather than a top-down. But anyway, process.
We have already referred the subject of fees to our strategic planning meeting. We may as well have one, at least so we can hear from Commissioner Karstens, we can hear from Commissioner Larson, and we can hear from you, Commissioner Doran, on your thoughts, your goals, your objectives before we take another step. That's my opinion.
I would just like to comment that I kind of parallel Commissioner Larson's comments on having Jason set up a bit of an outline for us. I think that outline would help us stay focused in our meeting and end our meeting with an outcome. Our meetings last year were an hour and a half to 2 hours, and sometimes we would be on one issue or subject for a long time, and we would leave that meeting without accomplishing. My thought is that Jason would work with Paula and come up with, in essence, an outline that we as a commission can work from so that we have something to start from.
Okay, let's move along, and I was just going to ask for a consensus, but go ahead.
I'll make a motion that we have a meeting for planning or strategic planning, and that prior to that time, Jason puts together his ideas as to what the goals for the next year for the Parks Recreation Department should be, and get it to us so we can think about it ahead of time.
Is there support?
Support.
Discussion. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same, motion carries. Next item on the agenda, old business, is Rotary membership.
Chris, how are we going to pick a date for the meeting?
Jason
I'll
usually...
work with Paula Segala to determine a date that will work well for her. Whether it be, how does this commission feel about a Saturday meeting for a larger block of time?
Fine.
In
As long as you
2011,
provide me
probably,
food.
if I look at my calendar.
Coffee.
So I'll contact you guys with that date.
Next item on our agenda, Rotary Club membership. In December, Jason wrote a memo to the Parks Board, and his recommendation was that the Parks and Rec Commission approve a motion to fund his membership with the Traverse City Rotary Club not to exceed $1,000 annually. And this was tabled for January, and I apologize, I didn't notice it was tabled until I was looking back. More information was supposed to be provided, and I will say that I did check with county department heads. There is no department head that has their Rotary, Kiwanis, Economics Club, whatever, paid for out of county funds. County funds, and I checked this with Dean Bott, as well as called department heads. The only person that I could find that is a member of Rotary pays his own dues, and that's Sheriff Bensley. So it's my recommendation that we deny this request. Jason, would you like to add anything?
No, I think that's fine. I'm not prepared to talk about this because I didn't know until we sat in this room that we were going to be discussing this. I did talk about this with Cooney back in December, and frankly, it's a moot point with some of the other commitments I have at this point.
All righty. It's off the agenda. Next, new business, Pool Advisory Committee. Kim, if you don't mind, first of all, I want to thank you for your work, but it is starting to get late, and I'm wondering if we can put this off for another meeting.
Sure.
Is that agreeable to the commission?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Twin Lakes rental fees. Jason?
We built a new pavilion as part of the Access to Recreation project out at Twin Lakes. It's roughly twice the size of our Civic Center pavilion, which goes for $46 for a 4-hour rental. It's my recommendation based on the newness of this pavilion, the size of the pavilion, the amenities that it offers, including a fireplace and electric, that the commission makes a motion to approve a fee of $90 per 4 hours for rental of the pavilion at Twin Lakes Park and utilize this fee until we examine fees as a whole.
I'll make that motion.
Is there support?
I second.
Discussion. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same. I just wanted to add,
Well, you...
I'm
say
sorry,
it.
Commissioner Karsten.
I'm opposed.
You are, I'm
Yes.
sorry. I forgot to ask if anyone's opposed.
You asked just as soon. That's okay. Anyway.
I do apologize. Yeah,
Okay.
I gotta wake up here. Okay. Time limit for presentations is on page 25 of your packet, and Jason, thank you. This does refer to public comment, but what I believe I was recommending was that presentations to the commission last no longer than 10 minutes, and that is, for instance, for the snowball people, anybody that wants to make a formal presentation to the Parks Board, someone coming making, I don't know, just a presentation about ice skating on a lake. We do this at the county board because we have been sitting through presentations that last in excess of 45 minutes. And I really do believe that someone should be able to make their point in 10 minutes. If the county Parks Commission has any questions, certainly they may ask away. But I would like that, Jason.
My apologies, Commissioner Maxbauer, I misunderstood what you had asked for. And so my sincerest apologies, we will have that for our next meeting. Although you may want to table this for the next meeting because this would go well with our bylaws. because this is the same language that I suggest in this motion. It's the same language that the county board uses, and if we're looking to streamline our board rules, our bylaws with what the county has, this may be an item for discussion. at our
Let's just, unless you have some comments, Commissioner Roskowski.
Could we just make it that we follow the rules as set by the county board for their meetings? With, you know,
Why don't we add this as part of our bylaw discussion next month?
Okay.
Is that acceptable?
Yes.
I'm hearing yes.
Would it be, then we're going to discuss presentations as well as public comment?
Yes.
Both? Great.
New business, T-Base, rule change, page 26 of your packet.
Jennifer Jorgensen from T-Base has approached us with some news from their board. They'd like to see rule number 4, they would like to see us change, rule number 1 to read, instead of reading, during regularly scheduled soccer seasons, these rules are enforced by T-Base staff. The Grand Traverse County Sheriff is granted authority to assist in enforcing violation of these rules. They've suggested we eliminate the first portion of that sentence that reads during regularly scheduled soccer seasons. So it now reads simply, these rules are enforced by T-Base staff. Grand Traverse County Sheriff is granted authority to assist in enforcing violations of these rules. The reason they requested this is our lease agreement with T-Base. They have responsibility for these fields throughout the entire year, not just regularly scheduled soccer season. And if they're going to have responsibility, they'd like to be able to enforce these rules. Within the rules, we also have rule number 8 that states activities that interfere with the primary use and design of Keystone Soccer Complex are prohibited. Therefore, because of using rule number 8, rule number 1 in conjunction with each other would establish what activities are in violation of the primary use and design of those fields. And I suggest to the commission that they change the rule number 1 of the Keystone Soccer Complex facility use rules to read, these rules are enforced by T-Base staff. The Grand Traverse County Sheriff is granted authority to assist in enforcing violations of these rules.
I'll make that motion.
Is there support?
I'll support.
I would suggest, though, that this probably should go to the Rules Committee, before, but I don't think it matters now, but just as a matter of protocol, it probably should go to the Rules Committee.
Absolutely.
Any further discussion?
Is there a possibility of unintended consequences with this? Is there anything that you see that would cause a problem with this based on past experience with T-Base fields?
This is done to prevent issues that we had in past experience. And this has been a process we've been working on for about 2.5 years at this point, to establish some rules at Keystone Soccer Complex. And the issues at Keystone preceded our Rules Committee. So this is kind of something that's been in the works, and we've done a lot of fine tuning. Because of some of the issues, Jerry Roskowski is now an ex officio member of the T-Base board to help keep us in tune with what their board's discussing, and we've forged a new relationship between the county and T-Base, a much better working relationship.
I have a question for commissioners. Does everyone have a copy of the T-Base lease and the T-Base rules?
No, not with me.
Could staff provide that to commissioners?
Sure.
I think that as we discuss changes in rules and leases, they should probably have that information. We have a motion.
I guess I have one more question.
Commissioner Larson.
The Keystone Fields are Park and Rec property, and so this T-Base is a parent organization that runs a program, and so we're giving them jurisdiction or authority to enforce the rules on county property, but no other county property would have that kind of setup. Is that accurate to say that?
The county has a variety. The county's always taken a landlord approach to Parks and Recreation, where we own the facilities and we allow someone else to operate those. We have a variety of agreements, including one with ICE to lease Howe Arena. T-Base, we had one in the past with American Legion. Each of our each of our leases for properties varied significantly. Currently, we still have an agreement with ICE for them to manage Howe Arena for 6 months of the year when the ice is on the floor. and they take primary responsibility in enforcing rules within that portion of the facility when they manage that facility. So this is similar to what T-Bays is asking for, and it's similar to one of the, I believe, in talking with Tim Schreiner, one of the benefits they saw of entering into an agreement with T-Bays several years ago, is that it provides an extra set of eyes and a new group of stewards for that piece of property.
Did that answer your question, Commissioner Larson?
I think so. So the Grand Traverse County Sheriff is granted authority to assist, but they can also initiate enforcement
Absolutely.
actions.
Yes.
I'm okay with that.
Any further discussion?
I have.
Commissioner Taylor?
I'd like to see the complete set of rules before I would act on this. I'm sorry. There was a reason we did that, and I can't remember. I'd like to be refreshed.
Mr. Karstens?
In the past, I've attended some meetings, and there was another group who wanted to use the soccer fields as well, and they were not allowed to because of the conflict.
Yeah.
Maybe, and that's possibly been resolved, and...
Commissioner Karstens?
That's our next thing to talk about.
It has been resolved, and it is next on the agenda. Further discussion? Commissioner Byrne?
Just to maybe clarify for Commissioner Taylor, we had talked about like hunting season and that soccer, we had a long discussion at one of our meetings that soccer ended on November 13th. And that's what started, I believe, this rule in that even though during hunting season that we would allow people to be on that property, if somebody was tearing up the property using a snowmobile and there wasn't any snow, things like that, they wouldn't have the authority to ask them to leave. And
yeah, and also like with rule number 8, we removed like
would you come up to the microphone and please state your name? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Jorgensen. I'm the executive director for T-Base. Originally, with rule number 8, we had listed activities that interfered with the primary use of the property. But by removing those activities, it's going to be, based on if there is an interference with the primary use, then that's for us to decide or for the county to decide. So if people want to snowshoe or cross-country ski, they still have the ability to do that because we're not telling them that they can't do that. Because I think that was your biggest thing, was you said that people should be able to use it during the winter if they want to go out there and cross-country ski or snowshoe. But we don't want people out there with snowmobiles when there's no snow on the ground and they tear up the fields and then we have to replace the turf.
I think at the time we were upset with T-Bays a little bit because they were not going to let certain other teams play out there.
Right,
we wasn't sure we were going to give that authority to T-Bays because of that,
I think that had been resolved and that wasn't brought up.
It's been a while, and I'm just trying to remember why we did that.
Commissioner Taylor, I've got the notes from that meeting. That was October 5th. McEllier called it, and this, I'm reading from the minutes that were approved. McEllier called attention to the void in the calendar year when the rules will not apply. The general park rules will apply to this park facility until Rules Committee can develop an individual set of rules for the entire Meyer Keystone Park property. Case was concerned that the enforcement period should end prior to the November 15th. Jorgensen stated they will be off the fields prior to November 15th. Jennifer took this to her board, and correct me if I'm wrong, took this to her board, and they said, well, we're responsible for these fields year-round, but the Parks and Recreation Commission, by saying, the rules end on November 15th, inadvertently disallow T-Base to enforce or take any type of stewardship role within that facility during that window of opportunity. And we made a change in the rules, and this is rectifying an issue that T-Base saw with those rules.
Okay, I think we need some kind of enforcement out there so there's no damage done to those fields. So.
Okay, we have a motion and support. We've had discussion. Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries. Next on the agenda, T-Base North Star User Agreement, page 27 of your packet.
One of the things that you guys just alluded to was the not allowing certain user groups on the field. This is the second year that T-Bays and North Star have approached us and said, we'd like your approval of our user agreement between our two organizations to utilize Keystone Soccer Fields. Both T-Bays and North Star are in agreement with this, and according to the lease we have with T-Bays, the premises may be used by other amateur soccer associations or organizations with the permission of T-Bays and the Parks and Recreation Commission. It's my recommendation, based on the fact that T-Bays and North Star agree to this, that our commission approves the agreement for the 2010-2011 seasonal year between T-Bays and North Star as presented in your package.
Commissioner Doran.
If I understand the intent of this, they need to come to an agreement, and then we look at it and we approve it.
Correct.
We're not actually a party.
Correct.
We just bless it.
Correct.
So I'd like in the very first line there at the end, it says Grand Traverse County Parks and Recreation. I'd like that taken out. Because that sounds like we're actually someone who's going to sign this, or we just, it's subject to our approval, and I would make a motion to approve it.
Is there support?
I'd like to just clarify. So, Al, you want to remove, or Pete, I'm sorry. You want to remove the first mention of Grand Traverse County Parks and Recreation?
Yeah, after T-Bays, take out Grand Traverse County Parks and Recreation.
Oh,
okay, but then maintain the last sentence in that paragraph that says this agreement is subject to Grand Traverse County Parks and Rec approval.
Right.
Great.
I'll second. Or support.
Is there support? There is. Discussion. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. And I should probably have brought this up. And Jason, perhaps you can address this at our next meeting. In the lease, it states that T-Base shall develop and submit to the Parks and Rec Commission a regularly scheduled maintenance and operation plan for review and approval by the Parks and Rec Commission. And this was brought in front of the board in June of '09. And you mentioned you were working on that. What's with them during that meeting? What's the status of that? And you don't have to answer that now.
Yeah, I'll have to review
like
that. It's something that Jennifer and I work on we work on that together based on recommendations from Jennifer and the T-Base staff.
But really, the plan needs to be reviewed and approved by the Parks and Rec Commission, and that has never been done, and the lease is dated 2002, and I really think we need to clear that up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other business, director's report.
In a matter of time, I don't have a whole lot for my report. I'd like to thank the commission and mention the MRPA conference earlier in the month was a great conference, and I appreciate the commissioners who attended. In my hand, I've got copies of four presentations from Dr. John Crompton, one of the keynote speakers at the conference. But I've also included the 2025 capital improvement plan. Based on our last meeting, some of the commissioners were requesting that. I have the document. I'm more than happy to supply it in hard copy, but this is the entire document. So I've got it here on disk. If any of you would like it, I'm happy to print it off. But I was hoping to pass it out on disk, and if you guys would like to review.
Thank you very much. Anything else?
Nope, that's it. Thank
Next on the agenda, comments from commissioners. Do we have any comments from commissioners?
Did we make any money last month?
No. Are you asking if we had a surplus?
What about next year? No, my question is, the recruiting of kids and getting the baseball season started is being jeopardized by time delay on our part of not being able to get to the next step until March 21st now or something like that. And I know when we had tryouts and stuff like that as little kids, I mean, we used to throw the baseball around in the snow, and there was a draft season and everything, was relatively early, and you had that enthusiasm. And now you don't even know which team you're playing for, and, who's the manager.
Who's on first?
I think you need to speed that up somehow.
The county board is moving as quickly as they can. It's on the agenda next week.
I was thinking about a presentation by interested parties, possibly to them, like a 5-minute presentation of why they want it, so that they get a feel for who they're talking to, how committed they are to possibly running the program.
I have a few commissioner comments. Jason, you mentioned the contract with ICE regarding Howe Arena. I think it would be beneficial if all commissioners had that contract in their files, and I'm sure Commissioner Karstens, Larson, and Doran probably do not have that contract either, being new commissioners. Another thing I have is I really think Whitewater is a park, and I would like it listed on our website as a park. It's listed in our master plan book as a park, and I think it's something that people might want to visit if they know it's there. So if you wouldn't mind adding Whitewater Park to our website.
Sure.
The other thing that I would like us to consider moving and taking action on is out at the Meyer property. We've been sitting on old cars and farm equipment for 3 years, and I really think that that needs to be addressed. And at some point, I would like the commissioners to go out and take a look at what's there, and so that they have an actual visual picture as we move forward with our planning and our recommendations to the county board. Commissioner Doran?
Is that on the west side of the road? Or?
Yes.
Can I ask a question at this time?
Well, certainly. It's commissioner comment.
Okay. I don't remember the month of the meeting, but I remember making a motion that by September 1st, we answered a letter to Zenas Meyer. And the only way that we could answer that letter was if we had a plan for that stuff. Has there been any communication with her?
It's
Or him?
he and I have been swapping phone calls this weekend.
Okay. Is he still interested
Yes.
in that? Okay. Just for the new commissioners, it was a gentleman who had expressed interest in a piece of farm equipment that we are in possession of and was willing to pay money for that. And because we didn't have a plan, we couldn't offer it for sale. And
Was that the
it
farm
just-
tractor, or was that
Yeah.
the 56 Chevy?
Yeah, I think it was a
It
tractor.
was a Ford tractor.
Yeah.
Ford tractor.
But there are some old cars out there that have value.
56 Chevy. I
And
believe.
we certainly should be aware that inventory is there. We should be aware of what it's costing us, if anything, to maintain that equipment and those old cars. And we should at least, even if we choose to do nothing, as Commissioner Larson said, that's choosing to do something. And that is staying with the status quo. I would like to see us address that at least on an annual basis if we don't come to the conclusion that we sell it. The other...
Commissioner Maxbauer?
Yes, Commissioner
Is that
Larson?
facility open? Do I need to pre-coordinate a visit out there, or do I
You
just go
will.
out there and look around?
You will need to arrange a visit. I mean, you can go out and do what I did, which was basically be lifted up by my husband as I peeked into the window through the outside of the building. But, I mean, I didn't...
You mean your husband's going to come with us? And
No. But, I mean, that's what I did. But if you would like to go in and take a look at it, I'm sure
In order to get inside, you have
Jason
to
would
have one of
be
us
more than
escort you,
happy
so you
to
don't-
accommodate us. But I think we need to address it. There's quite a bit of inventory out there.
There are also some restricted covenants on that property, so I'll have to do some research.
The next thing I have is nothing. Yay. Any other commissioner comments? Mr. Karstens?
I just heard Jason mention something about the possibility of restrictive covenants. And so, is there any indication that any of those might apply to that, any of the equipment, or the contents?
Yes, that's it. That's exactly.
So for us to understand, or to have suggestions about what to do with it, might be germane if we knew what the covenants were.
And that's, right.
I may be recollecting incorrectly, but I looked into this several years ago. And my recollection is that there is nothing that states that we must keep that inventory. So that's why I bring it up now. Okay. Commissioner Taylor?
Jason, I know you're young, you're ambitious. We keep piling a lot of things on you. I don't know, when do you know when you have enough? I mean, we have, you said you had 14 projects that are just sitting there, 16. You're going to meet with Paula. You're going to take over the baseball. Are you Superman? I mean, we just keep throwing things up, and you keep saying, yes, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. At what point? Because if you take on too much, you're not going to do a very good job overall.
And I tell you what, I'm not doing a very good job overall.
You're not?
It's frustrating, I'll be honest with you, but...
It must be frustrating.
It's frustrating, but a lot of these issues that I have, we talked about our strategic plan, and if I can come up with some goals, some of those goals might be something like increase or build 2 new youth, or create 2 new youth programs. I'm not looking for goals that, for you guys to tell me, Jason finished the master plan, Jason finished the, find funding for the Twin Lakes project, Jason managed the construction project at Twin Lakes. That's a work plan. I'm not looking for that from this commission. I'm looking to be proactive, for this commission to be proactive and give me direction through that strategic plan to say, yeah, we want to become a Parks and Recreation department, or we want to continue this landlord relationship we have with all these youth organizations. But if we continue this landlord relationship, when those kids' programs fail, or some issue comes up with those, we're the ones stuck holding the bag for it. And that forces us to be reactionary instead of proactive. And those are some of the issues and some of the things I'm asking for within that strategic plan. You're right, I've got 16 major projects, and they're all problems. They're all problems that needed to be fixed from years of the wrong thing happening. I'm looking through these. We should have had rules a long time ago for each of our parks, but we don't. We have a resolution that created this commission that's entirely different than, or vastly different than the act that creates our commission. We've never had a strategic plan. We're lacking a transition plan for ADA compliance. We have our master plan's outdated. Those are all items that one full-time person should take on each in a variety of different capacities. You're right, I'm not Superman, Dave, and I appreciate you bringing attention to that. I've been asking for priorities from this commission, and I've been asking for those through a strategic plan for us to be proactive instead of reactive.
As a suggestion, why don't you list those 16 items and email them out to the Parks Commission? Commissioner Ruskowski.
Well, I'm just saying, I see part of the problem is us sitting at these tables. Because every month, we're telling Jason do this, Jason do this, Jason do this. But besides that, run a Parks Recreation Department. So when I look at a time constraint, I see this report, that we have asked, commissioners have asked, county has asked, that every time we ask, takes away from what we hired it for, to run the Parks and Recreation Department. So we keep piling on, and it's just being to the point where that's why we have 16.
I guess that's why my concern, that we keep piling on and we're just, I don't know.
Any additional comments?
Well, perhaps part of our vision is if we're at this place and we want to get to here, you can't get there with the staff size that we have. So part of our vision might be to expand staff to get to that point. I agree, your points are all exactly right. I don't think we should give up trying just because it's a lot of work.
Anything else?
I wanted just to make a comment about us moving forward. Changing our meeting time, I think, has substantially allowed our public to be at our meetings and be a part of what is going on within our department. And I just wanted to say that I enjoy seeing as much public as we did tonight weighing in on the issues that we are faced with. So,
all right. I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
You have limited.
I'm sorry, public comment.
yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Griner.
Thank you again, Commissioner. I'll be very brief because you folks have spent a lot more time here. A couple things I'd like to say. First off, my heartfelt apologies to you for Mr.
Mr.
Butcher.
Griner,
Oh.
the microphone, please.
Thank you. All right. My heartfelt apologies to all of you for Mr. Butcher's display tonight. It was not something that it was something I hope would not happen here, and I apologize sincerely. A couple things I would ask you, if you continue on with the baseball program, please consider these things. Will you offer baseball scholarships for out-of-county residents, players? Because you have a large influx of players in this program that come from Illinois County, Antrim County, and some also from Benzie County. Please consider that. Also, please put in place a mechanism to evaluate the program so you don't get into a problem where we did. That was something I tried to do several years ago at the American Legion, and as I told you the other night, the American Legion doesn't function as fast as I would like it to, sort of like government. And lastly, also think about what will you do if you get to the point where funding is not available to continue the program. Will you ask people to take it over, or how will you handle that? That's all I have.
Thank you. Any additional public comment?
Could I ask Mark one question?
Certainly.
Would you consider, you don't have to answer this now, but if the county board does decide to go with this recommendation from this board, would you guys please consider the sale of whatever baseball equipment that you have to the county?
Yeah, I would think so, because it's not going to serve us of any value.
Okay, thanks.
Right. Thank you.
Any additional public comment? Please come forward, give your name and address.
My name's Greg Pash. I live at 503 West 8th Street. My wife can probably tell you that I remind her constantly what the duties of a board are. And according to John Carver, a preeminent expert on board governance and also a person who has an organization that both teaches and consults on board governance, there are three primary things a board is responsible for. The first one, and these things have been mentioned tonight, the first responsibility of a board, and I think the preeminent responsibility of a board, is to be the link or the bridge between the public and the chief executive officer. And in this case, it'd be the Parks and Rec director. The second point is that the board is responsible for setting policy. The first policy that the board sets are ends policies, goals, objectives. So we've heard this going around all the time, and I would highly recommend that you not relinquish one of your prime responsibilities, which is a director steers. It's your job to point the direction in which you want this ship to go. Don't give up your responsibility for ends policies. The second thing under policy that a board's responsible for is executive limitations. And this means you're basically saying what you think your chief executive should not do. There's two other points. I wasn't expecting to say anything about this. One is basically under policy, the board sets the policy for itself, and the board monitors its compliance with its policy. I believe that's point 3 and 4 under policy. The final thing, number 3, is evaluation of the chief executive officer, which is basically the same thing as the evaluation of the organizational unit. Your interface is basically with the chief executive officer. It's with the Parks and Rec. It's not with his staff. It's not with his subordinates. Basically, he's accountable to you. I could be wrong on the master plan. I've looked at this is not, so I'm done with board governance, but I also have strong feelings about strategy. And there's been a lot of talk about master plans, and it's my understanding from looking at them that master plans deal primarily with capital assets, land, buildings, streets, sidewalks, sewer system, this type of thing. Whereas a strategic plan deals with a lot of times not only that, but the actions you're going to take. And as Bob said, I think repeatedly, and I'll never tire of him saying it, that we need to know what our mission is. we need to know what our vision is, and we need to know what our core values are. And you can't do a strategic plan, you can't do a master plan, you really can't govern a board unless you've clarified what your mission is and what your dream is, like where you finally want to end up. And finally, I think the real foundation of any organization are your core values. What is it that you really believe in? You know, what are your standards? What do you stand for? Thanks for your time.
Thank you for coming. I will now entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make that motion.
Is there support?
Support.
In favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Hearing none, we're adjourned.